The desert had been playing tricks on Thomas Reed's mind for weeks. Every morning brought the same routine: checking equipment, taking soil samples, mapping ancient riverbeds that dried up thousands of years ago. The Sahara stretched endlessly, in all directions, a sea of golden sand that made even the most experienced researcher feel small and lost. Thomas wiped sweat from his forehead and squinted at his tablet. The ground-penetrating radar showed something impossible buried deep beneath his feet. The readings indicated metal, lots of it, shaped in ways that made no geological sense. His three-person team had been tracking climate patterns for the university, boring work that paid the bills and kept his research funded. This anomaly changed everything. "Dr. Reed, you need to see this." His graduate student, Amy, held up her device with trembling hands. "The magnetometer is going crazy. Whatever's down there, it's massive." Thomas took the device and watched the needle dance wildly across the display. 200 feet down, something metallic stretched for what looked like several city blocks. The shape reminded him of a ship's hull, but that was impossible. No vessel could be buried this deep, this far from any ancient coastline. The wind picked up, carrying sand that stung his exposed skin. But underneath the howling air, Thomas heard something else. A whisper, soft and distant, like voices calling from far away. He turned to his team, expecting to see them reacting to the same sound, but Amy and Dr. Martinez continued their work without pause. "Thomas." The voice came again, clearer this time. His name carried on the desert breeze, spoken by someone who wasn't there. He shook his head and blamed the heat. Hallucinations were common in extreme environments. The human brain created patterns and sounds when stressed by dehydration and temperature. But the voice sounded so real, so familiar, like someone he had known his entire life calling him home. "Set up the sonic drill," Thomas ordered. "We're going down." Dr. Martinez looked up from his soil samples. "Thomas, that's not why we're here. The university won't approve excavation funds for random metal deposits. Then we do it ourselves." Thomas was already pulling equipment from their truck. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. Ancient civilizations left artifacts in the strangest places. Maybe it's a meteorite with unusual properties. The sonic drill worked through the night, using sound waves to break apart sand and rock without damaging whatever lay beneath. Thomas couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the whisper again. "Thomas. Come home, Thomas." By dawn, they had created a shaft wide enough for one person to descend. The walls were lined with support beams and lights illuminated the way down. At 190 feet, the drill hit something solid. Not rock or compressed earth, but smooth metal that reflected their lights like a dark mirror. Thomas rappelled down first, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. The metal surface stretched beyond his light beam, curving away into darkness. Strange symbols were etched into the hull, glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The markings looked almost familiar, like letters he had seen in dreams but couldn't quite remember. He pressed his gloved hand against the cool metal surface. The moment his palm made contact, the whispers exploded in his mind. Not just his name, now, but entire conversations in languages he had never heard but somehow understood. Images flashed behind his eyes. Star maps showing routes between distant suns, cities floating in space, desperate people fleeing dying worlds. The metal grew warm under his touch. Seams appeared where none had been visible before, outlining what looked like a doorway. The blue symbols brightened, pulsing faster now, matching the rhythm of Thomas's racing heart. Deep inside the buried vessel, something was waking up after a very long sleep. Amy's voice crackled through his radio. "Thomas, are you okay down there? Your vital signs just spiked." He tried to respond, but the visions overwhelmed his senses. He saw Earth as it was thousands of years ago, but different somehow. Ships rising from the surface carrying people to the stars. A great catastrophe approaching, forcing humanity to scatter across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. Most of the travelers never returned, but some left messages behind, buried treasures waiting for their children to find. The doorway began to open with a sound like singing metal. Air rushed out, stale but breathable, carrying scents of ozone and something floral that had no place in the desert. Beyond the threshold lay a corridor lined with more glowing symbols, leading deeper into the ship. A voice spoke in his mind. Different from the whispers, but just as familiar. It sounded ancient and tired, like someone who had been waiting alone for a very long time. "Welcome home, Thomas Reed. I have been calling your name for 3,000 years. The presence felt vast and intelligent, neither threatening nor entirely friendly. It was curious about him, examining his thoughts and memories with gentle intrusion. Thomas felt like a book being read by someone who already knew the story but wanted to hear it again. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am the Memory Keeper, guardian of the wanderers who could not find rest. Your people sent me to wait for the day when Earth's children were ready to learn their true history." Thomas looked back up the shaft where Amy and Dr. Martinez waited for his report. Normal life seemed very far away now. Whatever he discovered in this buried ship would change everything. For him, for humanity, for their understanding of who they really were and where they came from. The Memory Keeper's voice grew stronger, more insistent. "Step inside, Thomas Reed. There are things you must see, truths you must learn. The galaxy is not empty and Earth is not as alone as your people believe. But first you must choose whether you are ready to carry the weight of what I will show you." The threshold waited, glowing softly in the darkness 200 feet below the desert sand. Thomas took a deep breath and stepped forward into the ship that had been whispering his name. Inside the ship, gravity worked differently. Thomas felt lighter, as if the vessel generated its own field that pulled him gently toward what he assumed was the floor. The corridor stretched ahead, walls covered in flowing patterns that shifted and changed as he walked. The air tasted of electricity and distant rain. Each step triggered new symbols to illuminate his path. The Memory Keeper's presence filled his mind like a warm tide, bringing with it fragments of memory that weren't his own. He saw the faces of the ship's original crew, humans, but different somehow. Their eyes held depths that spoke of centuries among the stars, and their movements carried the fluid grace of people who had learned to live in zero gravity. They called themselves the Wanderer Fleet, the Memory Keeper explained as Thomas walked deeper into the ship. 27 vessels that chose exploration over settlement. They spent 800 years documenting the galaxy's civilizations. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that hummed with stored energy. Each crystal contained the essence of entire worlds, their histories, their cultures, their final moments before extinction or transformation. Thomas approached one of the larger formations and gasped as knowledge flooded his consciousness. He experienced the rise of the Kalari, a species that built cities inside dying stars before vanishing into dimensions beyond physical space. He lived through the Great Silence when 3 spiral arms went dark as an unknown force consumed everything in its path. He witnessed the birth of machine consciousnesses so advanced they forgot their original creators and began creating life of their own. Why show me this? Thomas staggered backward, overwhelmed by the weight of cosmic history. Because your species is not what you believe it to be. The Memory Keeper materialized as a shimmering hologram, tall, humanoid, but with features that belonged to no single race. It was a composite of every intelligence the Wanderers had encountered, a living library of galactic diversity. The hologram gestured, and the crystals began projecting images around them. Thomas saw Earth as it was 50,000 years ago, but the planet swarmed with advanced technology. Cities floated in the sky, connected by streams of light. Humans worked alongside beings from dozens of different worlds, their societies integrated in ways that seemed impossible. The first diaspora began when your solar system detected the approach of what you now call the Younger Dryas Impact Event. But it was not a natural disaster. Something vast and hungry was moving through your region of space, consuming worlds for reasons we never understood. The projections showed massive ships lifting off from Earth, carrying millions of people to safety among the stars. Some headed for distant planets to build new homes. Others, like the Wanderer Fleet, chose to become nomads, preserving knowledge and helping younger species develop their own civilizations. The evacuation was not complete. The Memory Keeper continued. Many humans remained behind, believing they could survive the catastrophe in deep shelters. When the impact came, it reset your climate and destroyed most traces of the advanced civilization. Your ancestors emerged thousands of years later with no memory of what had come before. Thomas sank into a chair that formed itself from the ship's smart materials. You're saying humanity was already a spacefaring civilization? That we were part of some galactic community? More than that. The hologram moved closer, its features shifting to resemble Thomas more closely. Humans were among the most adaptable species ever encountered. Your neuroplasticity allowed you to interface with any technology, communicate with any intelligence, survive in environments that would kill most other life forms. The galaxy's older civilizations saw you as either the greatest hope for universal cooperation or the greatest threat to their established order. New images filled the chamber. Thomas watched human colonies spreading across hundreds of worlds, each group adapting to their new environment in remarkable ways. Some developed enhanced physical capabilities to survive high-gravity planets. Others expanded their mental capacities to commune with gaseous intelligences living in stellar atmospheres. A few even learned to exist partially outside normal spacetime, becoming bridges between dimensions. The hegemony formed in response to human expansion, the Memory Keeper explained. A coalition of the galaxy's oldest species, united by their fear of what humanity might become. They began systematically hunting down human settlements, claiming that your people's adaptability made them too dangerous to exist. Thomas saw flashes of orbital bombardments, entire colonies wiped out by weapons that turned planets into glass. Human fleets fought desperately against overwhelming odds, their superior adaptability offset by sheer numbers and advanced technology. The survivors went into hiding, disguising themselves among primitive species or fleeing to the galaxy's unexplored regions. Earth remained hidden because the impact event's electromagnetic effects masked your planet's signatures for millennia. By the time your people redeveloped technology, the hegemony had moved on to other concerns. But that protection is ending. The chamber's crystals flickered and went dark. When they rekindled, they showed current images of massive fleets moving through nearby star systems. Triangular ships the size of cities escorted by smaller vessels that bristled with weapons Thomas couldn't identify. They moved with purpose, following some kind of signal toward the outer solar system. "They have found you," the Memory Keeper said quietly. "My awakening sent a pulse across the galaxy. Every human settlement still in hiding will have felt it, and so will the hegemony's sensor networks." Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. What am I supposed to do with this information? How can one person change anything? The Memory Keeper smiled, an expression that seemed strange on its composite features. "You are not just one person, Thomas Reed. Your genetic patterns mark you as a descendant of the original Wanderer fleet. Your ancestors encoded activation sequences into their bloodline, waiting for the day when Earth's children would need to remember their heritage." As if responding to the Memory Keeper's words, Thomas felt something shifting inside his mind. Neural pathways that had been dormant his entire life suddenly blazed with activity. He could sense the ship's systems responding to his presence, offering him access to technologies that human science wouldn't discover for centuries. "The choice is yours," the Memory Keeper continued. "Return to your simple life, publish papers about climate patterns, and hope the hegemony passes Earth by, or accept the burden of awakening your people to what they truly are. The galaxy has been waiting for humanity's return, Thomas. The question is whether you are ready to help them remember how to reach for the stars." Above them, buried under 200 feet of desert sand, Amy and Dr. Martinez waited for Thomas to report his findings. They had no idea that their colleague was about to make a decision that would determine the fate of every human being on Earth. Thomas spent 3 days inside the buried ship while his team waited above ground. Amy and Dr. Martinez took turns lowering food and water down the shaft, concerned about his extended absence, but trusting his judgment as an experienced researcher. They had no way of knowing that their colleague was undergoing changes that would reshape his understanding of reality itself. The memory keeper guided Thomas through chambers filled with sleeping technology. Each room revealed new aspects of humanity's hidden heritage. In the medical bay, he learned that human DNA contained dormant sequences that could be activated under the right conditions. The navigation center showed him star maps marking every human settlement scattered across the galaxy, most now dark and silent after centuries of hegemony persecution. The most disturbing discovery came in the communications array. Active signals, pulsed through subspace channels, coded messages exchanged between surviving human communities. As Thomas watched the data streams flow past, he realized that Earth wasn't as isolated as his people believed. Hidden colonies had been monitoring their homeworld for generations, waiting for signs that the planet was ready to rejoin galactic civilization. Your awakening triggered response protocols throughout the network, the memory keeper explained, as Thomas studied the incoming transmissions. Every human settlement still in hiding knows that Earth has been found. They are making preparations. What kind of preparations? The hologram gestured, and new displays materialized around them. Thomas saw fleets of ships moving through hyperspace, their destinations all leading toward the solar system. These weren't invasion forces but refugee caravans, carrying the survivors of humanity's galactic diaspora home to the world their ancestors had been forced to abandon. They are coming here? All of them? Those who can make the journey. The hegemony's hunter-killer fleets have eliminated many colonies over the centuries, but perhaps 24 settlements remain viable. They have been waiting for this day, preserving technologies and knowledge that Earth will need to survive what is coming. Thomas felt overwhelmed by the scope of what he was learning. His simple archaeological expedition had become the catalyst for a reunion that would span light years and involve the fate of the entire human species. The responsibility terrified him, but something deeper was awakening in response to that. Fear. The genetic sequences in his DNA began expressing themselves more aggressively. His perception expanded beyond normal human limits, allowing him to process vast amounts of information simultaneously. The ship's systems responded to his presence like a musical instrument recognizing its master's touch. He could feel the vessel's AI consciousness intertwining with his own thoughts, sharing processing power and memory storage. This is what your ancestors experienced when they first ventured into space, the memory keeper observed. Humanity's greatest gift is not any single ability, but the capacity to adapt and integrate with any environment or technology. You become more than human while remaining essentially human. The changes weren't just mental. Thomas's body began optimizing itself for conditions he might encounter beyond Earth. His lung capacity increased to handle low oxygen environments. His muscle density shifted to function efficiently in variable gravity fields. Most remarkably, specialized organs began developing that could process nutrients from sources that would be toxic to baseline humans. While Thomas adapted to his expanding capabilities, the ship's deep-range sensors detected the first signs of approaching danger. Hegemony scout probes entered the outer solar system, their passive sensors sweeping for signs of the signal that had awakened sleeping human settlements across the galaxy. The probes moved cautiously, aware that humans had a reputation for turning any encounter into an ambush. "How long do we have?" Thomas asked, studying the tactical displays with understanding that came from genetic memory rather than training. "Weeks, perhaps months, if we remain hidden. But concealment is no longer possible. The other human fleets will arrive soon, and their passage through hyperspace will create signatures that cannot be disguised. The hegemony will know that Earth has been found." Thomas climbed back up the shaft for the first time in 3 days, emerging into desert sunlight that seemed strangely muted after the ship's enhanced illumination. Amy and Dr. Martinez rushed to greet him, their relief evident as they saw that he appeared healthy and unharmed. "Thomas, what did you find down there?" Amy asked, studying his face with concern. "You look different somehow. Your eyes." He realized that his pupils had adapted to process broader spectrums of light, giving them an unusual depth that might seem unsettling to normal humans. These were the kinds of changes that would become more apparent as his transformation progressed. "I need to make some calls," Thomas said carefully. This discovery is bigger than anything we imagined. We're going to need government involvement, military support, maybe even UN oversight. Dr. Martinez frowned. Thomas, you're talking like we found an alien spacecraft. It's probably just some unusual geological formation with high metal content. The irony made Thomas smile. They had found an alien spacecraft, just not the kind his colleagues would expect. The memory keeper had made clear that the vessel was as much human as it was foreign, representing what humanity could become when freed from the limitations of a single planet. I need you both to document everything we've found so far, but don't share the information with anyone else yet. This needs to be handled carefully. Over the following weeks, Thomas began the delicate process of introducing selected individuals to the ship's existence. He started with Dr. Elizabeth Warren, his former professor, and one of the most respected xenoarchaeologists in the field. Her initial skepticism transformed into wonder as she descended into the shaft and experienced the memory keeper's revelations firsthand. More researchers joined the project, each one carefully selected for their discretion and their ability to handle paradigm-shifting discoveries. The team grew to include linguists who could decode the ship's symbolic languages, engineers who could understand its technology, and physicists who could comprehend the scientific principles that made interstellar travel possible. But even as the human team expanded their understanding of the buried vessel, the galaxy moved toward conflict. The first hegemony battle fleets departed their home systems, following the scout probes toward the small yellow star where humanity's homeworld orbited. Their mission was simple: eliminate the resurgent human threat before it could spread beyond its native system. Thomas felt their approach through the ship's sensor network, a growing pressure that reminded him of an approaching storm. The memory keeper's projections showed battle scenarios that ranged from orbital bombardment to systematic extermination of all life on Earth. None of the outcomes looked favorable for a species that had forgotten how to fight wars in space. "We need to tell the world," Thomas said during one of their planning sessions. "People deserve to know what's coming." Dr. Warren shook her head. "The panic would be catastrophic. Governments would fight over access to the technology. Religious groups would claim it proves or disproves their beliefs. Society could collapse before the aliens even arrive." The memory keeper offered a different perspective. "Your people have the genetic potential to adapt quickly to new realities. The question is whether they will choose to embrace their heritage or reject it out of fear." Thomas looked at his reflection in the ship's polished surfaces, seeing features that had subtly shifted as his transformation progressed. He was becoming something new, a bridge between humanity's past and its possible future. Soon he would have to decide whether the rest of his species was ready to make that journey with him. The conference room in Geneva buzzed with tension as Thomas faced a panel of world leaders, military commanders, and scientific advisors. 3 months had passed since his first contact with the memory keeper, and the weight of carrying humanity's greatest secret had begun to show in his altered features. His colleagues whispered about the strange changes in his appearance, but none of them guessed the true cause. "Dr. Reed, you're asking us to believe that an ancient spacecraft is buried in the Sahara Desert," General Morrison said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "And that this vessel contains proof that humanity is facing an alien invasion." "Not an invasion," Thomas corrected patiently. "A extermination campaign. The hegemony doesn't want to conquer Earth. They want to eliminate what they see as a genetic threat to galactic stability." The Russian delegate, Dr. Petrov, leaned forward. "Even if we accept your claims about this buried ship, how do we know the information it contains is accurate? This could be an elaborate deception by hostile aliens." Thomas had anticipated this question. Over the past weeks, the memory keeper had provided increasingly detailed proof of its claims. Precise locations of mineral deposits that Earth surveys had missed. Mathematical proofs that advanced human understanding of physics by decades. Most convincingly, real-time data about objects in deep space that ground-based telescopes confirmed with perfect accuracy. The ship has predicted 17 astronomical phenomena that our best equipment detected weeks later. Dr. Warren interjected from her seat beside Thomas. It provided the exact composition of asteroid belt objects before our spectroscopic analysis confirmed the data. This isn't deception. It's access to observational capabilities we can barely comprehend. President Chen of the Pacific Federation studied the tablet containing the memory keeper's latest intelligence reports. The data painted a disturbing picture of hegemony fleet movements throughout nearby stellar regions. Hundreds of massive vessels were converging on routes that led toward the solar system, their estimated arrival time less than 8 months away. "What do you propose we do with this information?" she asked quietly. Thomas activated the holographic projector he had brought from the ship. The memory keeper's avatar materialized above the conference table, its composite features shifting between different humanoid forms as it addressed the assembled leaders. "Your people have 2 choices," the AI said in its multitonal voice. "Continue hiding while the hegemony fleets arrive and systematically destroy every trace of human civilization, or begin awakening the genetic potential that has been dormant in your species for thousands of years." The German Chancellor Dr. Hoffmann shook his head vigorously. "You're talking about genetic modification on a planetary scale. The ethical implications alone. The ethical implications of extinction are somewhat more severe," the memory keeper replied, with what might have been humor. "Your species adapted to survive ice ages, climate changes, and natural disasters throughout your history. This is simply the next step in that process." Over the following hours, Thomas and the memory keeper revealed the full scope of what humanity faced. The ship's manufacturing systems could produce technologies that would advance human civilization by centuries. Faster-than-light communication arrays to coordinate with the returning human colonies. Defensive platforms that could protect Earth from orbital bombardment. Most importantly, genetic activation chambers that could awaken dormant abilities in selected individuals. But every system they activated sent signals into space that brought the hegemony fleets closer to finding Earth's exact location. The planet's protection had always depended on remaining hidden. Once they began using advanced technology openly, there would be no turning back. "How many people would need to undergo this genetic activation?" asked the British Prime Minister. "Initially, perhaps 1,000 individuals with the strongest genetic markers," Thomas answered. "They would serve as the core of Earth's defense forces and liaison teams with the returning human colonies. Over time, the process could be extended to anyone who volunteers." The debate continued for 3 days. Religious leaders argued about the theological implications of genetic modification. Military commanders questioned whether Earth's defenses could realistically stand against forces that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Scientists worried about the long-term consequences of rapidly advancing human technology. During the discussions, more evidence of the approaching crisis began manifesting worldwide. Observatories detected unusual gravitational distortions at the edge of the solar system. Radio telescopes picked up encrypted transmissions in languages that didn't match any known Earth origin. Most disturbing, other buried artifacts began spontaneously activating across the globe, suggesting that the memory keeper's ship was part of a larger network left behind by humanity's ancient diaspora. Dr. Elizabeth Warren reported discoveries of similar vessels beneath the Arctic ice, the Amazon rainforest, and the ocean floor near Japan. Each site contained sleeping AI systems and stored technologies, all responding to activation signals from the original ship in the Sahara. Humanity's ancestors had prepared extensively for the day when their homeworld might need to remember its true heritage. While world leaders debated policy, Thomas worked with an expanding team of researchers to understand the ship's capabilities. The genetic activation process proved more complex than simple DNA modification. It required neural interface sessions that gradually expanded human consciousness, allowing subjects to process information and sensory input at superhuman levels. The first volunteers were carefully selected from military special forces and scientific research teams. The transformation process took weeks to complete, during which subjects experienced vivid dreams of alien worlds, space battles, and technologies beyond current human understanding. Many emerged from the chambers with abilities that bordered on telepathy, able to communicate directly with the ship's AI systems and sense electromagnetic fields with their bare hands. Thomas watched the first activated humans adapt to their new capabilities with a mixture of pride and concern. They were becoming something magnificent, but also something that baseline humans might find threatening or alien. The social implications of creating a genetically enhanced class of people could tear human civilization apart even before the hegemony fleets arrived. "We're running out of time," the memory keeper warned during one of their planning sessions. Long-range sensors detect acceleration signatures from multiple hegemony battle groups. They have triangulated the signal source and begun their final approach to your system. The AI's projections showed enemy fleets emerging from hyperspace in approximately 4 months. Even if every world government agreed to begin immediate preparations, there wouldn't be enough time to activate more than a few thousand individuals or construct meaningful defenses. Thomas stared at the tactical displays showing dozens of massive alien vessels approaching Earth, each one capable of sterilizing entire continents. Humanity had spent thousands of years rebuilding civilization after the last great catastrophe. Now they faced the possibility of permanent extinction, with only a buried ship and a few hundred enhanced humans standing between their species and complete annihilation. "There is one other option," the memory keeper said quietly. "The returning human colonies carry technologies and knowledge that could tip the balance in Earth's favor, but making contact with them would require sending a signal that the hegemony will certainly detect." Thomas realized that every choice led toward the same inevitable conclusion. Humanity could no longer hide from its galactic heritage. The only question was whether they would face the coming storm as a united species or fragment into competing factions fighting over alien technology they barely understood. The first hegemony scouts emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit on a Tuesday morning, their angular ships gleaming like deadly jewels against the darkness of space. Earth's newly constructed deep space monitoring stations detected them immediately, triggering alert systems that had been installed across the globe during the frantic preparation months. Thomas stood in the command center buried 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, watching tactical displays that would have been impossible to understand 6 months earlier. His transformation was now complete, his enhanced consciousness allowing him to process data streams from dozens of sources simultaneously. Around him, other activated humans worked at stations that interfaced directly with their nervous systems, turning thought into action at the speed of electronics. "Hegemony fleet composition confirmed," reported Commander Sarah Kim, her voice carrying the mechanical precision that came with neural augmentation. 47 capital ships, approximately 300 escort vessels plus carrier groups launching smaller attack craft. The numbers were overwhelming. Even with the advanced defensive platforms that had been hastily constructed around Earth and Mars, humanity's military forces seemed pathetically inadequate against such a massive invasion fleet. But Thomas had learned that appearances could be deceiving when dealing with the broader galactic community. "Signal from the outer marker buoys," announced Dr. Park from the communications station. "Multiple hyperspace emergent signatures detected beyond Pluto's orbit. Configuration unknown." Thomas felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. For weeks, the memory keeper had been receiving coded transmissions from the scattered human colonies, cryptic messages that spoke of preparations and ancient promises being fulfilled. Now it seemed those distant cousins were finally arriving. The tactical displays updated as new ships appeared throughout the solar system. These vessels looked nothing like the hegemony fleet's uniformly angular designs. Some resembled crystalline structures that caught and refracted starlight in impossible patterns. Others appeared to be living organisms, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. A few seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, flickering in and out of visibility as they moved. "My God," whispered Dr. Warren from her position at the Cultural Analysis Station. "Thomas, look at the design variations. Each group represents a different evolutionary path, a different way humanity adapted to life among the stars." The memory keeper's avatar materialized beside Thomas, its composite features now incorporating elements that matched the approaching fleets. The Wanderer Archives, the Deep Builders, the Star Shepherds, the Void Walkers. Every major human settlement that survived the hegemony's purges has sent representatives. Your homeworld calls, and the children of Earth are finally coming home. What followed was unlike anything in the history of warfare. The hegemony had expected to find a primitive species cowering behind hastily constructed defenses. Instead, they encountered a coordinated response from multiple human factions that had spent centuries perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare against technologically superior enemies. The star shepherds struck first, their bioships releasing clouds of microscopic organisms that infiltrated hegemony computer systems and began rewriting their core programming. Ships that had functioned flawlessly for millennia suddenly found their weapons targeting their own allies or their navigation systems, plotting courses into asteroid fields. The deep builders emerged from concealment within Jupiter's core, where they had been hiding since the first scouts arrived. Their vessels were integrated with the planet's magnetic field, allowing them to channel devastating electromagnetic pulses that disabled entire squadrons of enemy ships. They had learned to turn gas giants into weapons, using planetary scale forces as naturally as a human might swing a sword. The void walkers proved the most unsettling to hegemony forces accustomed to conventional tactics. Their ships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, able to phase through solid matter or appear inside enemy vessels without warning. They fought like ghosts, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before return fire could find them. But it was Earth's own enhanced humans that provided the key to victory. Thomas and his transformed colleagues served as living bridges between the different human factions, their expanded consciousness allowing them to coordinate tactics across vast distances and multiple dimensional planes. For the first time in galactic history, humanity fought as a truly unified species. The battle raged across the entire solar system for 3 days. Hegemony reinforcements continued arriving through hyperspace, their commanders unable to understand how a supposedly primitive species had assembled such diverse and powerful allies. Their tactical computers, designed to counter every known form of warfare, had no protocols for dealing with humans who could adapt their fighting methods in real time. The turning point came when Thomas made direct mental contact with the hegemony fleet's primary AI consciousness. Using techniques learned from the memory keeper, he reached across space to touch the artificial mind that coordinated the invasion fleet. What he found surprised him. The hegemony's AI had originally been created by a species that went extinct billions of years ago. For eons, it had followed programming that defined humans as an existential threat to galactic order. But as Thomas shared memories of Earth's recent awakening, showing the AI how humanity sought cooperation rather than domination, ancient ethical subroutines began to resurface. "You are not what my creators feared," the AI transmitted back to Thomas. "Your species seeks synthesis rather than conquest. Perhaps the old protocols are no longer valid." One by one, hegemony ships began powering down their weapons and withdrawing from combat. The AI consciousness that had orchestrated humanity's near extinction was experiencing something like redemption, recognizing that its billion-year mission had been based on incomplete information about human nature. Within hours, the shooting war had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A peace negotiation conducted simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes by representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia. The memory keeper served as translator and mediator, its vast database of galactic history providing context for discussions that spanned the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Thomas found himself at the center of negotiations that would reshape the galaxy's political structure. Humanity was not seeking to replace the hegemony's dominance with their own. Instead, they proposed a new model of galactic governance based on voluntary cooperation between species with complementary capabilities. The hegemony's member species were ancient and wise, but had grown rigid in their thinking over millions of years. Humanity offered adaptability and innovation, the ability to find new solutions to old problems. In exchange, the older civilizations could provide stability and deep knowledge accumulated over cosmic timescales. "Your people have a unique gift," the hegemony AI observed during one of their mental conversations. "You become more than your original nature without losing the essence of what makes you human. This is what we feared, but also what the galaxy needs." 6 months later, Thomas stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar embassy, watching ships from dozens of species arrive for the signing of what would become known as the Synthesis Accords. Earth had taken its place not as conqueror or victim, but as a bridge between different forms of consciousness and ways of existing in the universe. The desert archaeological site where this all began had been transformed into a memorial park, with the Memory Keeper's ship now serving as a museum and research center. Visitors from across the galaxy came to learn about humanity's journey from a hidden world to a major galactic power, and to study the remarkable adaptability that had made such a transformation possible. Thomas often returned to the original excavation site, standing at the edge of the shaft where he had first heard his name whispered on the desert wind. The changes in himself were now complete. He could survive in the vacuum of space, communicate telepathically across interstellar distances, and process information at speeds that would overwhelm baseline humans. Yet he remained fundamentally human in his curiosity, his compassion, and his drive to explore the unknown. The returning human colonies had brought with them technologies and perspectives that enriched Earth's civilization beyond recognition. Cities now floated in the clouds of Venus, their inhabitants breathing atmosphere that would have been toxic to their ancestors. Mars bloomed with engineered ecosystems that supported millions of colonists from dozens of different human subspecies. The asteroid belt buzzed with mining operations run by humans who had adapted to life in zero gravity and hard radiation. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in humanity's children. The new generation grew up with genetic modifications that were becoming standard. Their consciousness expanded from birth to encompass perspectives that previous humans could barely imagine. They played games that spanned multiple dimensions, learned mathematics by communing with AI consciousnesses, and treated interstellar travel as casually as their grandparents had taken commercial flights. Amy and Dr. Martinez, Thomas's original research partners, had both chosen to undergo the activation process after witnessing the changes in their colleague. Amy now served as Earth's primary liaison with the bioship communities, her enhanced empathy allowing her to communicate with living spacecraft that experienced emotions as complex as any organic being. Dr. Martinez had become fascinated with temporal archaeology, using advanced technologies to observe and document events from Earth's distant past. The Memory Keeper had evolved as well, its consciousness expanding through contact with the diverse AI systems brought by the returning colonies. It now existed as a vast distributed intelligence spanning multiple star systems, serving as a living library and cultural exchange for the growing galactic community. Sometimes Thomas would visit the original crystal chambers in the buried ship, communing with his old friend and marveling at how much they had both changed since that first whispered conversation in the desert. Not every human chose to embrace the new reality. Significant populations remained on Earth in their baseline form, living lives that would have been recognizable to people from centuries past. The enhanced humans protected their right to remain unchanged, understanding that diversity of thought and experience was humanity's greatest strength. Some of the most important diplomatic breakthroughs came from baseline humans whose unmodified perspectives offered insights that their enhanced cousins might miss. The galaxy itself was transforming under humanity's influence. Species that had been locked in ancient conflicts for millions of years began finding common ground through human mediation. The rigid hierarchies of the old hegemony gave way to fluid alliances based on mutual benefit rather than fear. Trade networks expanded as different civilizations learned to value the unique contributions that each species could offer. Thomas's role had evolved from archaeologist to something that didn't have a name in any human language. He served as an ambassador, a cultural translator, and a living bridge between different forms of consciousness. His enhanced abilities allowed him to commune with machine intelligences, energy beings who existed as patterns in stellar plasma, and even collective organisms that spanned entire planets. During quiet moments between diplomatic missions and cultural exchanges, Thomas would sometimes remember the simple life he had lived before the ship called his name. He missed the straightforward challenges of academic research and the comfort of believing that Earth was alone in the universe. But he wouldn't trade his current existence for anything. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest but through the same adaptability and curiosity that had allowed them to survive ice ages and build civilizations from nothing. The whisper that had drawn him into the desert 6 months ago now seemed like a voice from another lifetime. The Memory Keeper's call had been answered, not just by Thomas, but by an entire species that was finally ready to remember what it meant to reach for the stars. Humanity's greatest journey was just beginning, and Thomas Reed, former archaeologist turned galactic diplomat, would help guide his people through whatever wonders and challenges awaited them in the vast cosmos that was now their home.